The Trump administration planning a new mission to target drug cartels in Mexico. This is all according to 4 current and former U.S. officials familiar with that effort.
At 3:47 a.m., while the entire city of Arizona was still shrouded in darkness, a sudden event rocked the U.S.-Mexico border. Without sirens or warning, federal agents, with the support of the Mexican military, stormed a remote border area where the Sinaloa Cartel was preparing a large shipment of drugs and weapons. This was no simple raid, but a military assault, with cartel gunmen armed with modern weapons and armored vehicles, all ready to confront U.S. border guards. The confrontation lasted 42 minutes, resulting in the deaths of 89 cartel gunmen. Significantly during the battle, federal forces not only seized tons of fentanyl and weapons, but also uncovered a serious network of corruption, with the Mexican police chief found to be complicit in the cartel's activities. A war not only against crime, but also against a rotten system of government. What drove such a formidable gang to challenge the U.S. Border Patrol? And the bigger question, where will this war lead when corruption and crime persist at all levels of government? Continue watching Military Power to uncover the details behind this raid. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next shocking investigations. In the stillness of the Arizona desert, federal agents and military forces from the U.S. and Mexico moved into position. Their mission clear, but fraught with danger. Stop the Sinaloa Cartel's heavily armed convoy before it could breach the border. For months, intelligence had been gathering piece by piece. Federal authorities knew that this was no ordinary drug run. This operation was different, larger, more coordinated, and deadlier than anything they had encountered before. This was the culmination of 6 months of meticulous planning and strategic intelligence work. Surveillance footage, intercepted communications, and on-the-ground informants had all confirmed one terrifying truth. A cartel convoy, armed to the teeth, was coming to push its way through the border with weapons and fentanyl, enough to cause devastation across the United States. As the convoy approached, the weight of the operation hung heavy in the air. Federal agents, stationed along the border in desert terrain, knew they would face overwhelming firepower. At any moment, they could be staring down a wave of gunmen, vehicles bristling with heavy artillery, and explosive weapons meant to turn the border into a battleground. The convoy, a formidable sight, was made up of 32 armored trucks, many of them armored beyond recognition, designed to withstand small arms fire and designed to transport both fentanyl and high-powered weapons from Mexico to the U.S. In the distance, through the darkened desert sky, thermal imaging equipment could already see the convoy's movements. The trucks' heat signatures illuminated in the black of night, like ghosts on the horizon. This was it. No turning back now. The first shots rang out as cartel gunmen inside the convoy opened fire. They knew the stakes were high and their chances slim, but they were determined to breach the border and deliver their deadly payload. The fire from the cartel's convoy came fast and furious, automatic weapons unleashed from behind armored windows. The night sky was illuminated by streaks of tracer rounds. The sound of bullets cutting through the desert air was deafening, and the tactical response was swift. Federal agents on the U.S. side of the border, equipped with thermal imaging, night vision, and heavy artillery, responded in kind. The battle that followed was nothing short of chaos. A firestorm erupted along the border as U.S. forces and cartel operatives clashed. It wasn't just a shootout, it was a military-grade engagement. The cartel believed they had the advantage. Their convoy was armed to the teeth, and the firepower they possessed could outgun most law enforcement units. But what they didn't anticipate was the precision and readiness of federal forces positioned and prepared for the worst-case scenario. With night vision goggles and thermal cameras tracking their every move, the federal agents maintained their composure, returning fire with calculated precision. Every vehicle that the cartel had brought into the fight became a target. Agents picked off the convoy's lead vehicles with sharpshooters, taking down gunmen with pinpoint accuracy. As the firefight escalated, the cartel's convoy was systematically disabled, one armored vehicle at a time. On the ground, the battle was nothing like the cartels had planned. The federal agents didn't flinch. They held their ground, pressing forward despite the enemy's overwhelming firepower. The sound of rocket-propelled grenades echoing across the desert only fueled their resolve. It was clear that the cartel gunmen had underestimated the U.S. response. As vehicles were disabled, their gunmen, now caught in a deadly crossfire, fought desperately to maintain control, but the tide was turning. Within 42 minutes, the firefight reached its climax. The federal forces had secured a decisive upper hand. The cartel's push to breach the border was halted permanently. The battle had cost the cartel dearly. 89 of their operatives were dead, their ambitions shattered in the fiery aftermath. While federal forces had sustained a few injuries, no lives were lost on the U.S. side, a testament to their training and preparation. As the smoke of the battlefield cleared, the authorities seized the remaining vehicles, recovering weapons and narcotics from the wreckage. Among the seized equipment was a terrifying arsenal. 127 assault rifles, 34 belt-fed machine guns, 18 rocket-propelled grenade launchers, and over 840 kilograms of fentanyl, the largest single fentanyl seizure in the region's history. The sheer scale of the operation was evident. This wasn't just a drug bust. This was a monumental success for law enforcement, an operation that shattered the Sinaloa Cartel's reach and scent. The arrest of the gunmen at the scene was only the tip of the iceberg. As federal agents scoured the documents seized from the cartel, they began to uncover troubling patterns that pointed directly to Sheriff Eduardo Morales. Though the cartel's immediate members were now behind bars or dead, the ones pulling the strings, hiding in the shadows, had yet to be fully exposed. Morales, once a respected figure in the small town of Emuris, had been far more than just an accomplice. He was an integral player in the cartel's operations. As the hours passed and the investigation deepened, the agents knew they were getting closer to the heart of the problem. Sheriff Morales, a man trusted by the community and his colleagues, had been playing a dangerous game for years. Using his position as sheriff, he had been providing the Sinaloa Cartel with sensitive law enforcement information, shielding their activities from interference. What started as a simple tip-off about an upcoming raid or patrol route grew into a far-reaching, systemic betrayal. Each piece of evidence that agents uncovered painted a more damning picture of Morales' involvement. He wasn't just providing the cartel with small-time tips or making an occasional slip-up. He was a cornerstone in their operations. His intelligence had allowed the cartel to operate with impunity, knowing exactly when law enforcement was closing in. Morales had essentially become the cartel's inside man. With his help, they were able to plan and execute large shipments of fentanyl and weapons, moving freely across the U.S.-Mexico border without fear of detection. The intercepted communications between cartel operatives told the story of a long-standing collaboration. They detailed how Morales fed them key information about federal and local law enforcement plans, ensuring they could stay one step ahead. Whether it was the timing of a raid, the location of a patrol unit, or the security measures in place at specific checkpoints, Morales' inside knowledge gave the cartel an unmatched advantage in their illegal operations. The trust the cartel placed in him was evident. They relied on him not just for a one-off favor, but as a trusted partner who made their entire operation more efficient and secure. But it wasn't just his access to confidential information that tied him to the cartel. The financial records were damning, showing an ongoing flow of money from the Sinaloa Cartel into Morales' personal accounts. Large, unexplained deposits began to appear, totaling over $150,000 a month. These weren't just one-time payments for a favor. They were monthly bribes, structured to ensure his loyalty. Such a sum was far beyond the salary of a small-town sheriff, and it was clear that these payments were for services rendered, services that had allowed the cartel to continue its reign of terror across the border. The longer agents dug, the clearer it became that Morales was far from an accidental bystander. His actions had been deliberate, calculated, and deeply intertwined with the cartel's operations. He had provided the cartel with more than just information. He had given them the protection they needed to operate unchecked. His corruption had allowed them to smuggle fentanyl, firearms, and other deadly contraband with little fear of law enforcement intervention. Morales had become a linchpin in the Sinaloa Cartel's operation, and his betrayal had left a deep scar on the very system that was meant to protect the public. In the end, the evidence was overwhelming. The payments continued for years, with no sign of stopping until the operation finally brought them to light. It was clear that Morales had not only betrayed the trust of the people who had elected him, but he had also played a key role in enabling the cartel's deadly activities, allowing them to thrive at the expense of countless lives. His corruption was part of a larger, darker network that stretched far beyond the small town of Emuris, a network that federal agents were now determined to unravel. Once all the evidence was clear, the arrest was only a matter of time. On a chilly morning, the atmosphere in Morales' home was suddenly shattered by the banging of a door and hurried footsteps. Fully armed federal agents were in action. Before he could understand what was happening, Morales found himself surrounded, the peace of his home instantly broken. As the agents stormed in, he realized there was no escape. The walls of his world, built on secrets and betrayals, were crumbling. The price had come, and he couldn't run away. While the agents searched, they were unsurprised to find files, documents, and correspondence related to the drug cartel. But that wasn't what stressed them out. What followed was far more dangerous. Blocked phone calls, encrypted messages, and a dense network of communications between Morales and cartel leaders. This evidence not only proved a long-standing relationship, but also exposed the control he had ceded to the gang over the years. As the agents pulled him out, the real shock arrived. Morales, for the first time, realized the gravity of his actions. There was no turning back. His eyes widened in panic. His heart sank, realizing his life and career had completely collapsed. He had betrayed everything he had ever represented, betrayed the very community he had protected, and now the consequences were inevitable. But this was only the beginning. As Morales was put into the van, the chief agent clutched the documents brimming with evidence, a treasure trove that opened the door to an investigation into a much larger network of corruption in which Morales was a key link. The federal agents, not stopping at his arrest, were preparing to continue their pursuit of others within the local police ranks. With each passing minute, an underground system of power was exposed. The expanding investigation wouldn't stop at Morales. It would uncover the entire network of those who aided the gang, those who turned the law enforcement system into a tool for criminals. As the vehicle left the neighborhood, a sense of tension and anxiety gripped the task force. Each step, each small victory, brought them closer to a truth no one could have imagined. A truth that would not only shake power, but also damage public trust in the government. The price of this betrayal was immeasurable. Morales' confession didn't take long to come. His expression showed resignation, as if he had accepted the inevitable. He knew that the vast network of corruption he had run, in collaboration with the Sinaloa Cartel, had finally been exposed. He had lived on borrowed time, and now it was all over. In a quiet, almost detached voice, Morales began to speak. For years, he had been on the cartel's payroll, a silent ally who made sure that their shipments of drugs and weapons moved smoothly across the border. He had helped them dodge countless raids, provided intelligence about law enforcement operations, and turned a blind eye when cartel members operated openly in his jurisdiction. Morales had been their key to success, the man who made sure their business flourished while the rest of the community remained in the dark. As the confession spilled out, it was clear just how deep the corruption ran. Federal agents had already gathered substantial evidence: bank records, phone call recordings, and intercepted communications. Morales had been paid generously for his loyalty to the cartel. Over the years, he had received tens of thousands of dollars every month, money that had been carefully funneled into his personal accounts. The cartel knew exactly what they were doing when they bought off Morales. They were paying for safety, for protection, for a sheriff who would make sure their criminal empire ran undisturbed. The agents sifted through the bank records and everything lined up. Transfers made in exchange for the protection of drug shipments. Calls made to cartel members, warning them of upcoming raids. In one of the intercepted conversations, Morales assured a cartel leader, "I'll make sure no one interferes. Your shipment is safe. The border is clear." It was clear now that Morales was not just a passive participant. He had been an active player in the cartel's operations, using his power to prevent law enforcement from stopping their activities. His role was vital. Without him, their smuggling operations would have been far more difficult to execute. When the agents asked him about his motivations, his answer was simple. He had been paid to look the other way, to turn a blind eye to the suffering his actions caused. The money, he admitted, had been too much to resist. Morales' confession marked the beginning of a larger investigation. The agents knew that his arrest was just one piece of the puzzle. His role had been critical, but they were now turning their attention to other officials who might have been complicit in helping the cartel. The rot within the local government was far from over. With Morales' confession in hand, federal agents moved quickly to investigate further, knowing the corruption ran deeper than just one man. The exposure of his ties to the cartel would open the door to more arrests and more secrets buried within the local government. After the successful operation to dismantle the drug smuggling network along the Arizona-Sonora border, life in the region began to stabilize, though the road to full recovery was still a long one. For years, the presence of cartel activity had cast a dark shadow over the local communities, fueling violence, corruption, and fear. With the cartel's powerful grip broken, the region started to breathe a sigh of relief, but the effects of their absence were slowly unfolding in unexpected ways. One of the first visible changes came in the form of security. The region had long been a battleground between cartel operatives and law enforcement, with gunfights erupting regularly and the threat of violence always looming. Streets that once saw daily patrols of armed cartel guards were suddenly quieter. Families, who had been forced to live in constant fear, began to see a new sense of freedom. Kids were no longer afraid to play outside, and local businesses that had once closed early for fear of cartel retribution started to reopen. Even the once quiet desert towns began to see a rise in foot traffic and commerce as people felt safer to go about their daily lives. With the cartel's operations disrupted, law enforcement agencies also gained more room to act. The local police forces, who had long been hampered by corruption and fear of cartel retaliation, were now able to step up their efforts. The communities, which had often been plagued by corruption at the local government level, found themselves with a chance to rebuild trust in the institutions meant to protect them. The crackdown not only targeted the cartel members directly involved in the trafficking of fentanyl and weapons, but also exposed the deep corruption within local authorities. This sent shockwaves through the region, as many corrupt officials were arrested, allowing honest officers to take over critical positions. In the weeks and months following the operation, federal support continued to flow into the region, bringing resources for community rebuilding. Local schools received funding for new programs aimed at offering education and job opportunities to young people who had been drawn into the dangerous world of drugs. These efforts were seen as critical in breaking the cycle of violence that had ensnared many families. Youth programs, employment initiatives, and vocational training began to gain traction, offering a brighter future to those who had once felt their only option was to join the cartel. Though the immediate danger had passed, the long-term effects of cartel rule still lingered. There were pockets of resistance from remnants of the Sinaloa Cartel, and while the law enforcement presence had increased, there were still lingering tensions within the communities. Yet, for the first time in years, many residents began to feel a sense of hope. The streets were no longer a battleground, and the oppressive weight of cartel power had been lifted. People began to envision a future where their children could grow up without fear of cartel influence, where the threat of violence no longer defined their day-to-day existence. The fight was far from over, but the operation had set the wheels of recovery in motion, bringing a much-needed sense of peace and stability to a region that had been caught in the cartel's grip for far too long. The reason the cartel's military tactics could not withstand the meticulously prepared U.S. federal defense system lies in the sheer superiority of American law enforcement and military capabilities. While the cartel operated with military-grade weapons, armored vehicles, and tactics honed in the shadows of criminal networks, their efforts fell short against a force that was not only equipped with superior weaponry, but also strategically trained to handle such high-intensity confrontations. U.S. forces were backed by cutting-edge technology, including thermal imaging, night vision, and drone reconnaissance, all of which gave them an undeniable advantage in both intelligence and battlefield awareness. These tools allowed federal agents to anticipate the cartel's every move, striking with precision before the cartel could react. Moreover, the U.S. military and Border Patrol tactical units were specifically trained for such scenarios, maintaining disciplined coordination and response under extreme pressure. The cartel, on the other hand, while well-equipped, lacked the cohesion and professionalism that a well-trained federal force brings to the table. The cartel's gunmen, although armed with powerful weapons, did not have the tactical advantage or coordination necessary to overcome the U.S. federal forces' prepared defense. The U.S. response was swift, precise, and overwhelming, demonstrating that no matter how advanced the cartel's military-grade arsenal was, it couldn't match the expertise and technology of federal forces who had spent years refining their tactics for exactly such a confrontation. In the end, the cartel's miscalculation of the federal response led to their downfall. The cartel believed their overwhelming firepower and armored vehicles would give them the upper hand, but they severely underestimated the tactical superiority and preparedness of U.S. federal forces. Their military tactics were simply no match for the meticulous and well-prepared defense the U.S. had in place. This operation wasn't just a victory for law enforcement, it was a statement that no criminal organization, no matter how armed or organized, can outmatch the full force of the U.S. military and law enforcement when they are determined to protect the border and dismantle criminal networks. The events that unfolded at the Arizona-Sonora border prove that no matter how advanced or well-equipped the cartel may be, it cannot match the preparedness and expertise of U.S. federal forces. The cartel's military-grade weapons, armored vehicles, and tactical maneuvers simply couldn't outlast the precision and coordination of the federal agents, who utilized cutting-edge technology and superior training to dismantle the operation. Despite their overwhelming firepower, the cartel underestimated the resolve and capabilities of a well-prepared U.S. defense system. This operation wasn't just a victory, it was a powerful reminder of the U.S. government's commitment to protecting its borders and dismantling criminal organizations that threaten its safety. The cartel's defeat serves as a clear signal that law enforcement, when backed by modern tools and coordinated tactics, will always have the upper hand in this ongoing battle. As the fight against cartels intensifies, the question remains: should the U.S. government double down on investing in advanced military technologies and law enforcement support to stay one step ahead, or are there other innovative strategies that could be just as effective, if not more so, in dismantling these dangerous criminal networks? We want to hear from you. Share your thoughts, ideas, and solutions in the comments below. Your insights matter in shaping the future of these operations. And remember, if you want to stay informed on every high-stakes move and uncover the untold stories behind these explosive operations, be sure to subscribe to Military Power, where we deliver exclusive, in-depth analysis straight to your feed. Don't miss out on the next chapter of this ongoing battle for justice.